Thank you so very much, Lawrence. I want to first start by saying the name of the song that we just heard, which was Brave by Sarah Bareilles. It seems like a perfect song to be playing on a day like this, the day I acknowledge, which is one day after the end of Women's History Month. But in terms of being an advocate and ally for all our people, doesn't matter if we missed a day. We're here today and we will be joined by Aphrodita Gutierrez and Haley Stevenson, who I don't see pulled in yet, Lawrence. So is that my layout? Oh, there's Aphrodita. And there we go. Okay. So I'm joined by my two colleagues. So thank you everyone who is in attendance. I truly love doing these Heritage and Awareness Month events, and we've had a combination of external speakers, but candidly, I always love when we get to feature our own people here because it's I don't know that we always have that many opportunities to be able to hear from our leaders, hear from our colleagues, and I think it's just so important because each of us, I think, can see ourselves in each other. It brings us a little bit closer. So I'm going to do a quick intro and bio of Aphrodita and Haley, and then we will dive right in. So Aphrodita is an executive vice president and treasurer of Mutual of America. She was hired in October of 2007. And she started her career at the company as a junior analyst in finance more than 16 years ago. We just did the math for you, you know. Aphrodita graduated from Fordham University with a degree in finance and a minor in economics. She is a strategic and collaborative and supportive leader who aims to create a culture of excellence within her team and the division. Aphrodita is a first-generation American born to Albanian immigrant parents from Montenegro. She's the mom of two, a 9-year-old daughter, Aria, and a 7-year-old son, Beckham. Thank you, Aphrodita, for joining us.
Thank you, Tara.
Haley is a senior manager in the deposit administration area and joined Mutual of America in December 2022. She had 3 years of prior experience prior to joining in finance at Accenture. Haley graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in physics and a minor in business, and she is known for her contagious positivity and enthusiasm that she brings to her team and fosters an atmosphere of teamwork and collaboration. Thank you for joining. And what I will say is common amongst the three of us is none of our schools are in the Final Four, nor will any of our schools even in the NCAA. So we all have that in common because it's not only the end of Women's History Month, we are snap right in the middle of all the playoffs. Actually, not even, I don't think we have men or, and none of us have men's or women's teams competing. So again, thank you both. I often, myself, Tish, Anita, and the team who puts these together think about the topic that we want to do for the month, and then we think about the people. And sometimes, as I said, we do have the pleasure of being able to have outside speakers. But these are always the best, I think, the intimate conversations. I thank you because oftentimes I volunteer you to do them. So I kind of ask you, but don't really ask you. And you could kind of say no, but you kind of really can't. So thank you for saying yes, even though you didn't really have a choice. But let's just start. Let's talk a little bit about both of you. So let's dig in. Aphrodite, I'll start with you first, but same question for both of you, because I think people see you and know your name, but I don't know how much people know you. So I'll ask you first, but Haley, same question for you. Just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and I did your intro, but who are you behind your intro, and a little bit about your journey in financial services, your journey through Mutual of America.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you again. It's an honor to have been asked or voluntold to join you for this. And in great company. As Tara mentioned, I am a first-generation American born to immigrant parents. My mom came to America when she was 4, and my dad when he was 24. They both have had a significant impact on how I view my career and my work ethic, which is really mirrored after theirs, as I grew up watching them work towards their dreams. I grew up in the Bronx. I'm the oldest of 4 children. My dad worked 2 jobs most of my childhood as a waiter to make ends meet. And my mom went to school in the evenings for both her bachelor's and then her master's degree while working as a paraprofessional in a school during the day. I'm a strong believer that it takes a village, and I witnessed that with my own parents. We spent a lot of time with my grandmother, aunts, older cousins as my mom went to school, and my dad worked most evenings. I grew up witnessing their dedication and work ethic and all that they did, both at home and in their professional careers. Fast forward all these years, my dad is a restaurant owner and truly encompasses all that the phrase American dream entails. My mom just retired from the New York City Board of Education with her assistant principal certification and now works for the administration union. Both of my parents, though technically retired, still work at least 4 days a week. I know that was a lot of information about my parents, but it really set the foundation on my view of my own family and my career. I think my work ethic emulates theirs. They did everything that they could do to ensure that their children had a great education in America and every opportunity that they did not have. I've always loved math growing up, and I wanted to be a math teacher originally. As I got older, I saw firsthand just the politics in the education system, watching my mom and hearing some of the issues and concerns that she had. She always did the best that she could to make a difference. But sometimes she couldn't do everything, right, with the public school system that she was working in. Once I was at Fordham's Business School, I knew that a corporate environment was a better route for myself, and one in which I felt like I could make more of an impact, one where my individual hard work could actually take me places. I applied for an internship at Mutual when I was a junior in college, and I spent the summer before my senior year working as an intern at Mutual of America. By the end of my 8 weeks here, I knew I loved working here. I was challenged, but still felt like I was amongst family and friends. And as I mentioned, I grew up with my extended family during my childhood. So finding a professional environment that felt similarly as I was raised, it made sense for me. After college, I interviewed at a few companies in New York City, Mutual being one of them, and I accepted a position in financial reporting in 2007 and have been here ever since. About 5 years into my career here, I actually put in my 2 weeks notice and was going to resign. I had accepted a position with another company. Chris Festog approached me with a new opportunity to manage a team that he was creating, the planning and analysis department, and I decided to stay. I had wanted to be challenged, and that was one of the reasons why I was going to leave. And this new opportunity really was the challenge that I was seeking. I'll say it again and again. It was the best professional decision that I made. I love learning and being challenged, being able to make an impact. And Mutual really has offered me that opportunity from that day forward. Not only do I love what I do and the people that I work with, but it means so much to me that we serve nonprofits and local communities across the country. And I feel like I'm supporting them indirectly in the back office, providing retirement services and planning for their futures. I'm proud to work for Mutual of America and all that we stand for as a corporation. With America in our name, I'm just reminded on a daily basis, really the way that we hold this country, it holds a special place, both in my hearts, my parents' hearts. And I just feel like this is where I was meant to be. I hope that I can have an impact on others around the company, just like a number of individuals internally have had on me and my career.
Wonderful. Thank you. Haley?
Oh, I gotta follow that. Okay, no, just kidding. I'm Haley. So I was born in Flemington, New Jersey. I'm one of 3 kids. I'm the oldest in the family. I did grow up with working parents, both in the corporate field, but my mom has really been kind of the mentor or the role model to me growing up. She worked through my whole childhood. She actually was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was in high school and continued to work through it. So it just really shows how brave you can be and how you don't need to just stop working because life happens. So it really showed me that everything I do and how hard to work is because of her. So she really showed me what to do and how to have a work ethic continuously growing up. And I've really strived to kind of have that brave mentality that she has. I went to school actually for physics. I know that's very weird. People are like, where did that come from? When I was in high school, I had taken a few physics classes and absolutely loved them. I loved the math behind it. I loved understanding how kind of the world works, because that's really what physics is the math behind the world. So I went to college for physics. I genuinely enjoyed it. I loved learning about Earth, space, everything about it. But while I was at school, I kind of decided that pursuing a PhD in physics wasn't going to be my route. So I decided to get a minor in business and take my math mind to kind of the business world and see how I can use that to work in a corporate environment and really understand finance and things like that. So I graduated with a physics degree with a minor in business, and I joined Accenture after graduation as a client financial management, where we really kind of analyzed, forecasted, and provided just like that back office, start to finish analysis to our clients and things like that. I had a great experience working there. I think it was a great learning start. You learn a lot there. They teach you really the basics and the fundamentals and everything like that. But once my 3 years I kind of hit that 3 year mark, you can kind of see how you can probably use what you've learned to help other organizations as well. And that's where this opportunity kind of came in for me, where it was, how can I apply everything I've learned and really use my brain, be challenged a little bit more, and grow the experiences that I've been given. And that's where Mutual really came in. And personally, for me, I think it was one of the best decisions I've made to date. Coming to Mutual was because I've been given this opportunity that wasn't in a big company. A smaller company gives you exposure to a lot more. You see a lot more executives around, and your face is seen a lot more. So I think that's something very special and unique to Mutual, and I've really appreciated everything so far.
Wonderful. So off script for a second, are you super excited about the eclipse for next week?
Yes, I am a little. My favorite thing was actually black holes because they're kind of very interesting.
I figured so. So the title of this session is Empowerment in Action, Mentorship, Sponsorship, Allyship for Women's Success. Now, I'll preface our conversation by saying we are having this conversation for Women's History Month, and so this is focused around women's success. But the reality is this, we could fill in the blank with any kind of person in here and it would still mean the same. So the ideas around mentorship, sponsorship, allyship runs the gamut for any single person that's an employee here. And so I want to talk about the two of you. We asked the two of you to come on together as you have a mentoring relationship, and you can talk a little bit about it. But I want to just note to our employees that part of what I want for you to take away from this conversation is the idea of either reaching up to senior leaders to be able to get their perspective or advice, or more so to the senior leaders looking at within your organization, or maybe not even within your organization, but within another organization within this firm, and think about where you can make a difference in the skill sets that you can bring to bear to help our talent who are up and coming. But be that as may, we're going to focus on women's history because it is Women's History. Well, it's the day after Women's History Month. So for Aphrodita, in the Women's History Month spotlight that we put out for all of our employees last month, we talked about a McKinsey & Company report about women in the workplace, and we indicated that women remain underrepresented in leadership positions. Long before hitting a glass ceiling, which people may know about the expression of glass ceilings at a senior level, the report indicates that advancements tend to be harder and slower at the manager or the director level. So before you can get to senior leadership, we have to get people there. We have to create the pipeline to get that there. And so this has actually recently been labeled a broken rung. And it's one of the obstacles that we see for women being able to get into advancing leadership. So they don't have the steps that they need to take to be able to be considered for those senior most positions. So we want to talk a little bit about how mentorship or allyship or sponsorship can help to shatter that for aspiring women. But I'm going to just give definitions just so we're all kind of on the same page of what the difference is between those three. So the idea of a mentor or mentorship, it involves guidance and advice and feedback. Mentors are experienced and trusted advisors, and they help mentees navigate the workplace while bringing their whole selves to work every day. Mentors can sometimes be in your reporting line, but most times not. A mentor is usually someone from outside of your reporting line who looks into the depths of the organization and thinks about how they can provide unbiased support, and it's really an open and honest relationship between the two. to, where mentor can sometimes tell mentee, hey, you didn't do this right. And mentee can say to mentor, I don't know if I did this right. Can you give me some advice, or can you give me some advice before we go down this road? So that's mentorship. Sponsorship, which is a term that I don't know that we've used much here, but the idea of sponsorship, it involves existing influence in networks making important connections or advancements for others. A sponsor could be within your organization. A sponsor does not have to be within your organization. A sponsor can be someone who sees how you work. They don't give you advice or guidance, but they're in the room. If you love Hamilton, you have to be in the room. So in the room when it happens, and when someone says, here's this opportunity, someone says, hey, did you think of someone? So a sponsor is someone who typically can expend their own professional and social capital upon making introductions or helping to make pathways available to someone who they see. They may or may not, and the sponsoree may not even know that this person is making pathways for them. Sometimes it's just, and so that again, for senior leaders, the importance of using your voice, the importance of watching and using your voice to add something into a room that could impact someone's career. The idea of allyship involves individuals actively influencing the interest and inclusion of marginalized and underrepresented groups. So in this case, as I've said, we can think about who, any of us can be any of these things. When you typically think about someone who's an ally, it's typically someone which is from I'll call it a majority group, or a well-represented group, I'd say, who thinks about the needs of those who are underrepresented. And there's underrepresented could come in many different ways. And they actively try to understand what their interests are and really tries to govern for inclusion in a way that is an ally. And sometimes for allies, particularly if they're in the majority in the organization, their voice can change things for not one person, but a kind of a group of people. So those are the three kind of terms. So I'll go back to you, Afrodita, for the question. We don't have to answer all three because it'll probably take, we have a lot to answer, but let's just take any one or two, however you want. But how do you think mentorship, sponsorship, and allyship can help to break this barrier that we talked around the broken rung?
Yeah, thank you, Tara, for that. I mean, I think all three of these aspects of support that we're focusing on today really impact females differently, but they all play a pivotal role in a female's career. I'm a firm believer in opportunities, giving opportunities to individuals that show that they want to be challenged and want more out of their career. An opportunity may present itself, but it's what you do with that opportunity and your hard work that speaks volumes. I pride myself on honesty and transparency. This is really the same in my role as a mentor and as a sponsor. I want to provide opportunities wherever I can for any aspiring female leader. An opportunity can allow them really just to prove what they can do. This can open doors, to your point, to be in the room and at the table in which conversations are taking place. So whether they're there or not, that sponsorship, and I like to use the term champion, right? So championing for being a champion for another female, it can go a long way. And again, it's just giving someone the opportunity to prove what they can do, get their name into conversations, and then really being offered those opportunities to be a part of important discussions with leadership, help open the doors for continued involvement and education. It allows you to learn, build confidence, and really continue to provide valuable input to the leadership team. As a female leader, I continue to not only want to be a member, but be a sponsor and a champion for leaders with great potential. The strength of a team lies within each of the individual members, and I want to continue to put effort into those members on my team, both within my division, but even more broadly within the team at Mutual of America. Again, and I think it's really placing that emphasis on sponsorship and even allies, right? So Tara, we talk about allies, and really throughout my career, a lot of my allies historically have been men. So when we talk about the majority group, right, they've given me opportunities and they've brought me into conversations. And once you're given an opportunity, hopefully more than one, I think what you do with it from that point forward is really where then maybe the mentorship can come into play, right? Where you can have conversations and get trusted professional advice around next steps or how to handle certain situations.
Yeah. One of the things that we worked on last year, and we will continue to build upon this year is the performance management process, including the goal setting process. And so, Aphrodita, what you said resonates with me around, once you have the opportunity, you have to work for it. But I think part of what I want this organization to think about, those on the call and those who listen later, it's you have to be ready for the opportunity and you have to know what you want, right? And so it's what you can't go to as a mentor and say someone and say can you be my mentor? Well, how can I mentor you? I don't know what I need. So you have to have done a little bit of thinking around, well, what are the skill sets that I need someone's help for? The more specific you are, not so specific, but the more specific you are, the more they can guide you. In order to think about the skill sets that you need, part of what we did with the work with the job architecture is thinking about what does it look like at the next level. That's part of the reason why we put in these very transparent, kind of concrete, I'll say, steps, because it helps you to think, okay, I know I want to do this. I know that I need to learn this. I can learn it on the job. I can use a mentor to help me. I can figure out how we kind of get those learnings by myself so that all that stuff works in together. But the importance of the emphasis around our performance management process for this year and going forward in the goal setting is to make sure that everyone owns their career, which means that everyone has to start by looking within themselves, thinking about what they want to do first, then thinking about the skill sets that they need, and then going about figuring out whether you need a mentor to get there. And hopefully, as they're watching you do that, you have a sponsor who's watching you. It all kind of plays in together. So the two of you, we asked you to be on here because I love this idea of a mentoring relationship. And I know we don't have, I'm not going to keep saying what we don't have, but I'll just say what we don't have right now. We don't have a formal mentor program here. And that's actually okay. Aphrodita and Haley, when we were prepping, I said, I've done both. I've done these formal ones and I've done informal ones. And I think the mentoring relationships that have the most sustainability tend to be these informal ones. Sometimes the formal ones, you try to match people together and there isn't, I mean, there needs to be a little bit of a glue. There's not always. So while there's a reason for them, and I do think at some point we may consider doing one, I don't think you have to have a formal relationship to have the strength of a mentorship relationship. So tell me about, you can decide who goes first, but how did your mentoring relationship come about? Who initiated the relationship? Do you have a specific goal? If you do, can you share? How often do you meet? What does that look like in action?
Yeah, Tara, and you make a great point, right? As Haley and I were preparing, and we had a few conversations leading up to this webinar. That was one of my comments to Haley was like, I didn't even think about formalizing our mentorship, right? It's been an informal one since Haley started. But as we were talking through it, it was actually, I think it worked out better for us. It was a more natural fit. And it's been a great relationship since Haley started. So I was asked to interview Haley, as she had mentioned, a finance background, but she was interviewing for a job within the admin ops area, in which she was going to be building out a team that would work closely with finance. We had a great conversation during the interview. Haley came across as she's very mature for her age, intelligent. She portrayed strong leadership qualities, as she described what she did at her previous role, and really the thought process behind what she was doing. How does she think about certain analyses and thought processes? Haley came across as a young female leader with a strong skill set in finance and business, which we could always use more of. I saw a lot of myself in her during that interview process, and I knew that if she accepted the job at Mutual, I wanted to be a resource for her. Again, as I mentioned, we don't have a formal relationship. It's worked well for us. Once she started at Mutual, I try to keep in touch with her. WebEx, makes that a little bit easier these days. So, I would just message her, see how she's doing, how she's holding up. I was providing support while she was building out her team. So I asked her, do you have any questions? How's the interview process going? Do you want me to look at any resumes for you? And then as work got started, we continued to work a little closer together on projects that overlap between admin ops and finance. I tried to be present on the meetings with her, as I try to do in all meetings, but really offer her specific advice, best practices on what she was working on, any thoughts that she should take into consideration as she's building presentation analyses, and really just putting a thoughtful final work product together knowing that a lot of the work that Haley is currently doing does make its way to executive leadership. So again, her name is on a product. What is the executive team looking for? And really just answering any questions that she may have. Again, Haley is exposed to a number of senior leaders within the company. So just making sure she felt like she had a resource to go to if she had any questions.
Now, Haley, did you get the sense when this was happening that Aphrodita was, I mean, Aphrodita, I think what you do, you would do for anyone. So let's just say that,
Of
right?
course.
Because we want everyone to succeed. But that being said, it seemed like there was a bit of a connection between the two of you. Haley, did you kind of sense that? What did you think of the relationship? And is there a piece of advice that Aphrodita gave you that's resonated with you that you think that you want to share with us?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, when we first started talking, I think the conversation just flew so nicely. And I think sometimes when you're in an interview and things like that, you get really nervous, no matter what it is for. It makes it easier when you can connect to someone and you feel like you have that connection. It makes even the interviewing or just speaking continuously more comfortable and things like that. And every conversation we have, it's just very comfortable. I feel very much myself, which I think sometimes in a corporate environment, everyone doesn't have. So for me, that was really important that when we started this mentorship, unofficially, that the conversations were easy. I was never scared to ask anything. She really made me feel very kind of at ease and at home. I think some of the best advice was really kind of just be yourself, speak up, make sure that you're using the opportunities you're given, because I think sometimes when you get in front of the higher leadership and things like that without having too much exposure beforehand, you can kind of freeze up. And just having her there and having the guidance beforehand really helps to not feel as nervous and things like that. And kind of how we talked about before this meeting, as we prepared, this is informal. I have gone through formal mentorship processes as well with my previous job. And I think that sometimes that informal process does work out better in the long run. I feel like what we have is more genuine sometimes. And it's really about that connection you have. I think that it comes in all shapes and sizes as well. You don't need to always just say, oh, you're my mentor, or things like that. I think that it can just be someone's really providing you guidance and looking out for you and things like that.
Yeah. The one thing I'll also say is that, it works so nicely when there's kind of a gel between the two of you, but for the kind of the greater good of everyone, sometimes finding someone who is the complete opposite of you is also really helpful because they give you a sense and perspective. In a way, when you have someone who is like you, not that it's sometimes you get confirmation bias because that doesn't, but sometimes there is we think alike. Of course, this is what I would do. If you have someone who's in finance, who's your mentor is someone who's in, I don't know, internal audit, for example, they're going to be looking for very different things and they're going to give you a different kind of steer. So it works well when you have this kind of collaborative nature. I think this works nicely. But again, as I give advice to others, sometimes you take someone who's not like you, and you don't have to have just one, and they don't have to last forever. So I'm guessing, Haley, when you were in a program, if you were in a formal program, it probably was for a finite period of time. I'm guessing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So sometimes there's something very specific that you need help with. You agree to meet for a period of time. We've solved that through, not that you can't maintain the relationship, but the regular ongoing meetings that you might have with a mentor. You decide you're only going to do that for 6 months, right? Because you also have to be mindful on both sides of taking up too much of each other's time and so on. But I do think this is my advice as people who listen, as you think about people that you may want to have be a mentor if you are thinking about, think about what you want, think about how long you need it for, and also think about what this is a mentee. So a mentee is asking a mentor for advice, but there's also cross mentoring, right? And so what as the mentee can you bring to the mentor to help them see things differently? Haley, you have I'm sure a very different perspective from Aphrodita, only working for, a few years versus Aphrodita, a very, very simple kind of, it's almost too easy as, I don't know, social media or something, there's just things move very quickly. Move very quickly. And sometimes the people who are younger or starting out their career have a different perspective than those who are so I say all that between what you say, but I also say all that for people to listen is if you are thinking about how you navigate around these conversations and asks around being a mentor or a mentor asking a mentee, you have to put the work in first before you start to have the conversation, right? Aphrodite, this next question is for you. Research indicates that women are often encouraged to pursue leadership roles only when they meet all criteria. And actually, I don't. And the question is written as always encouraged, but I actually don't know if it's encouraged. I think I'll kind of rephrase that to say sometimes women ourselves are afraid to pursue opportunities unless we feel like we've checked every box. And generally speaking, and men are often promoted based on are likely to be based on their potential. Again, this is statistics, not here, but we'll kind of go with that. Taking it a step further, data does suggest that women tend to undersell their work, rating their performance 33% lower than an equally performing male. That is research. So sometimes we're harder on ourselves than we should be. So is this something, Aphrodite, you personally experienced? And what advice can you give to women about overcoming self-doubt, or if the idea of this imposter syndrome around, which sometimes holds women back from pushing themselves out forward? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Tara, I'd say early on in my career, I most definitely experienced self-doubt and undersold my work. I often allowed, individuals to take credit for my work. I lacked the confidence, I think, early on as a professional, and that would be the exact scenario in which a mentorship could go a long way. Trusted professional advice from a leader within the company, I think, is priceless. And again, I think that's where you want to trust the individual that you're building a relationship with. The advice that I would give in these scenarios is your hard work is something no one could ever take away from you. Work hard, be proud of your work product. That speaks volumes on its own. And then once you layer in advocating for yourself, I think you would be a force within the company. And that's something that no one could ever take from you. Seizing leadership opportunities can also seem difficult, especially as a woman when raising a family. So I have 2 kids of my own. I came back to work when both of my children were 3 months old. There are times when this has been very difficult, both as a mom and as a professional. It really does take a village. As I mentioned, I am lucky to have support from both my family, my husband's family, with the kids. I know not everyone is in the same situation in terms of having extended family, but a village is still a village. It may be comprised of different types of people, neighbors, friends, but that village really can allow you to put in the additional effort into your career. I grew up with a full-time working mom, and I knew that I could do that as well. I want other women to know that they can do it also. It's not by no means easy, but it most definitely is possible. And I think just knowing that the leadership opportunities are there for you. You can do it. You can have a family and be a leader within the company. I think just knowing that other people have done it and you can do it is sometimes half the battle, and just giving yourself that confidence to move forward. I am, again, a strong proponent of being intentional, both at work and at home. When I'm at home with my children, I'm intentional with my time with them. With the hybrid work environment now, I get to go to more of their school shows, volunteer in their classroom occasionally, and then if needed, I work after they go to bed at night to catch up on anything that I might have missed that day. But just that flexibility, again, provides with the opportunity to be able to do it both. I continue to stress to female leaders that they can do it and should have the confidence in themselves that they can achieve it. That's a lesson that was taught to me by another leader within the company. It's propelled me forward ever since.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause for a second. Thank you. I'm going to come back to that. I realized that I didn't say to the audience that we were taking questions. And so we're going to continue the conversation, but I do encourage anyone who may have a question or a comment to drop a question or comment in the chat box for us. Aphrodite, let's go back. I think one of the, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. Similarly, we probably, very similar, come from immigrant families, like the both of you. My mom worked, so I watched her work. My mom was actually a single mom, probably went from middle school on, so I kind of knew that I was good. I watched her as a role model. She worked in a very different setting than me. She was a secretary, but something that was really important. And as I've had my kids who are now older, as many of you know, I had my mom who lived with me for a really long time, and she really was a rock for me and allowed me to do things that we have to do. One of the things I'm going to just kind of I'm going to editorialize a little bit of what you said, although I agree with what you said, is I also think that we have to recognize that sometimes you do have to take a step back, and that's okay too, as women. And so I think we all have ebbs and flows in our careers, and there's times where we push forward because we can, and there are times that that sometimes some people have to say, you know what, I'm going to prioritize something else, my health, my kids, or whatever. And that's really okay too. I think in those kinds of instances, though, the idea of having a mentor, the idea of knowing what you want to do to make sure that people understand where you are in your career and having those transparent and honest conversations about your career are even more important. Yeah.
I think it's just providing Tara the opportunities, right? So it's beneficial for to see what is possible, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is possible to have both, or you see. So I see with my own daughter, she's in Girl Scouts, and in our town, right? I'd say it's about 50-50 mix in terms of stay-at-home moms versus working moms, and like my daughter's 9, and her entire troop, they see it. So there are some parent volunteers where they're stay-at-home moms, and they see that, and they see what the value that they bring. They're at school more often. They volunteer almost all the time within the classroom. I'm around a little bit less, right, for my daughter, but they're at an age where they see it, right? They see both aspects of you can be a stay-at-home mom and raise children and have a family, and that brings some aspect to to your life, to your children's life, or like we said, we grew up with full-time working moms, and then that just brings a different perspective. And I think it's just making sure that women know they can have both. They can have what they want, and you don't have to choose between.
Yeah.
The choice is yours.
Yeah, and I think Aphrodita, well, Tish, I'm going to jump in if you need to at any time. So I think Aphrodita, you and I'm a little bit older than you, but you and I are probably closer to each other than Haley. And I do think there was this idea, the dynamics of how you work as a woman were very different. And I think of when I started working, I wore a pantsuit to work every day, and I wore a button-down shirt, and it was less of and Haley, you said this, there was less of your authenticity that came through, because when I started working, Aphrodita, probably the same with you, was you weren't allowed to kind of bring your full selves to work. You wouldn't really talk about your kids, or if you didn't have kids, your personal activities. It was very different. Haley, you're not so far out of school. I'm wondering what your impression of leadership is, work life is. What's your perspective on women and women rising in the way that you're now kind of relating to the professional workspace?
I definitely think now it's talked about a little bit more. I know when I first started, all the women I talked or worked with were very vocal about kind of their lives, what they were planning for, and things like that. It was very welcoming that said, okay, like I'm going to have a kid and I'll be back in 3 months. I think that it was just very accepted. I have never felt otherwise where I couldn't work after having a kid or things like that. And it could just be that was the way that my mom showed me growing up, that she did both. She was around for almost everything. There was sometimes she was pretty late. But that you can do both and you can have both, and like you don't need to give up one for the other or things like that. It's really your choice.
Yeah, I will give another plug to some of the changes that we made last year related to our parental leave policy. So we expanded the parental leave policy to a parental leave policy versus a maternity leave policy, and we expanded it from a unpaid leave of absence to a paid leave of absence, which I do think it's really important. And what I love around the parental leave, which is really where companies do now. They don't really do maternity leave anymore. And over the course of the years, as I think of when I had my oldest, who's almost 22, I had 3 months of maternity leave. My husband had 5 days off, and the dynamic of that is very different. And so, what I love now is organizations who have parental leave policies. Is it says it doesn't kind of it takes this a stigma is probably not the right word, but it probably was. It takes a little bit of the stigma off being a working mom to just recognize that parents have rights, equal rights, and so it doesn't make, and hopefully, and again, I speak to the audience to say, hopefully it makes people feel more comfortable taking time for their families, which is a conversation that we didn't have. I mean, I've been working 20 plus years, almost 30 years. It's a conversation that we didn't have back then. So I don't think we have any questions right now, but we still have a lot of people on. So I know people are listening. So I'm going to encourage one more time in case you have any questions. But I have a few more that I'm going to I'll go with. So Aphrodita, this one is for you. How can allies in an organization contribute to creating a more supportive and inclusive environment for women, especially in male-dominated industries or leadership positions? And let's all be honest, financial services is still a very male-dominated industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Tara, as well as the finance division, right? It's historically male dominated. But I will say, be more intentional, right? Be intentional with your conversations, both on the topic of discussion, as well as who you're having conversations with. So get to know individuals outside of your department and your division. Pay attention to the conversations that are taking place. Ensure that those conversations are, again, inclusive, and really supporting, the group that you're around. Create opportunities for other females to take the lead on a project or work with other leaders internally, so other leaders can get to know another female and their work that they can provide. Be vocal. Send an email to the supervisor of that female or even their division head regarding the excellent work that they've done. Be vocal on their behalf, in support of what they've done, what they have contributed. Again, whether they're in the room, whether they're not in the room. What I really do, I'm a strong believer of is that there's always room at the table for all women. It should never be one or another. And I think historically, Tara, when you think about, when you started working and, I've been here for over 16 years, it's changed a lot. I think we've come a long way. A lot of the work that you've done just in terms of, market salaries, the job architecture, there's room for everyone at the table, all females. And I think historically it's always been, if there's one there, is it one or it has to be one, not both.
Yeah.
And I think we've broken, sort of broken that years ago. We continue to do that in a lot of the meetings that I sit in more recently. I mean, the room is mostly women, and it's really good to see that. I think, again, it goes back to being more intentional with your relationships, your conversations. Earlier, Tara, to your earlier point, just about, even when you look to build a mentor-mentee relationship, it's being vocal, being an advocate for yourself, working with other leaders, asking for opinion. As a leader, when we, get together internally, I try to be more intentional about who I'm speaking with, getting to know other individuals, either within my division, outside of my division, if it's a corporate event, and really just getting to know someone. And then I think sometimes that's what someone may need, just to sort of break down that wall between you, get them a little bit more comfortable. So if they have a question, they feel like they can approach you with it.
And that's one of the questions that we put on the new performance review process was around building an inclusive work environment. And people have said, well, what does that mean? I don't have a DEI goal. Well, no, you don't have to have a qualitative goal, but just what you said, Aphrodita, is the case, is how do you bring people into the room? How do you bring people in the space? How do you see people? What kind of environment do you bring? Those are all the things that lead to DEI. So we have two questions, and I'm gonna look at and they're kind of almost the same. So I'll read them both, but they're kind of almost the same. And either one of you can answer. The first question is, can you provide insights on how a mentee can initiate a mentor-mentee relationship? So we talked about that, but we can elaborate that on a little bit more. And then the second question is, my question is around getting people comfortable asking for a mentor. How could someone start a conversation with another person about being a mentor? The first step can be the most difficult in finding the right words. And finding the right words is something that's needed, but women, and that is needed. And for women, to have to feel they have the right to ask. So let's maybe talk a little bit about kind of the same thing. So if how do you actually start to think about doing it? So how do you kind of start thinking around getting around it? How do you identify someone? And then when you have identified someone that you might want to mentor you, how do you go about asking? Either one of you can take that, or both. Words of advice.
I have a kind of a comment to that. I would
Okay.
really say that kind of your mentor should also be your role model a little. For me, Aphrodite is a role model. I look up to her and how she carries herself, how she speaks, and everything like that. It's someone that you kind of strive to be a little bit like. Not saying that you have to mirror them or anything like that, but there's aspects of everything they do that you kind of strive to take a little part of it. And if you could be even a quarter of what they are, it's a nice feeling. For me, that's really what drives being like going to a mentor is someone that you really do look up to, someone that you want to really learn the ropes from and things like that. I think the other thing is really don't be scared to ask. I know it's hard to ask the question. You're going to be nervous. Your hand probably shakes. Mine still does. But really just ask the questions because those are opportunities. Like it's you taking the opportunity to do something. And I think that's the important part.
I
Yeah.
agree.
And what I would say as a leader, is I continue to try to be, again, be more intentional with having conversations, trying to break down walls, getting people comfortable having a conversation with me. So that way, if they wanted to approach me, they felt like they could. I continue to stress, you have to be an advocate for yourself. And this is one of the areas in which advocating for yourself would come into play, right? So it's approaching a leader. I don't want to speak for all of them, but I've learned from a lot of the leaders that we have here at Mutual. I don't think you could go wrong, approaching any one of them. We do strive to build a strong culture here. We are a lot like a family. We want to continue to build up the young leadership. I personally am an advocate for it. Approach me at any time. If you see me and you have any questions at all. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that they would all also be willing to have conversations. I think it just takes that first step. And then from there, I think, it really can grow and really mature into various different relationships. And maybe you don't end up with a mentor with the initial person that you reached out to, but maybe I'll reach out to Tara or I'll reach out to Michelle or another leader internally and set you up with maybe someone that I think might be a better fit. But at least the conversation has started.
Yeah. So Tish is I'm gonna well, Tish wrote a comment, which now I'm going to say, even though she just said it was a general comment, but I'm going to say it. I love that we have our own inside view here. But she said, I often think the qualities you see in a potential mentor are cues to how receptive they'll be to the idea of mentoring, which I think is very true. I'll add on to that this conversation is about mentoring and sponsorship. But before we even get to, so there is a commitment to mentorship because we have about 200 people on the call, and I don't want everyone to run out and go to the 7 leaders and say, "Can you all be my mentors?" Because that's not realistic. So what I would say is, before you think about that, before you start asking one for a mentoring relationship, ask someone for a coffee chat. One of the things we did at American Express, they love that term. They love that term. It was kind of their term, coffee chat. Invite a senior leader out to sit down and have coffee with them. Talk to them about who they are. Figure out if they're the person that are they the right mentor for you, right? Because just because you see someone doesn't mean that you'll have that gel, doesn't mean that you know someone well enough to know if that skill set's the right skill set. So I would encourage those at least to start with that. And I think a coffee chat, by the way, could be 15 minutes. You can do a 15-minute conversation with someone. It doesn't have to be a full half an hour just to be able to get to know someone. And then once you've done that, then I would say the next step is do the work yourself. So again, don't go to a mentor and say, I want to be a mentor. And the person says, well, what do you want to work on? And you don't know. We have the goal setting process that's going to be launched. Actually, I think we have a webinar on it on Wednesday or Tuesday soon. So use the time. I would say right now, use the time, work on your goals. So leave here. What are your goals? Once you figure out what your goals are, once you and your manager align with your goals, then you can start to think about who you might want to have as a mentor, and you can engage your manager for ideas. Now, the thing about mentorship rules of the road here are they are intended to be confidential conversations. So the mentee should feel comfortable kind of sharing their foibles, their concerns, their so on with their mentor, and their mentor should not take that information and go back and tell their manager unless the mentee has said, "Can you help to advocate for me?" But the role of the mentee is not of the mentor is not to do for the mentee. It's to be able to teach them how to fish, right? Not to fish for them, but teach them how to fish so they can do it on their own. Okay, so that's the advice to the senior leaders. It's a very trusted relationship, but you have to kind of think of it in that way. But I do think part of what we there what part, a lot of the things I'll say myself, but the senior leadership is trying to do with some of the changes that we make are breaking down walls, and I think part of the idea of kind of eliminating this officer non-officer dichotomy is to break down the wall between the two and say we're all colleagues. And so when I write notes to everyone as an organization, I purposefully call everyone colleagues because we are. And if you look at it that way, then the idea of asking for a coffee chat should not be that hard, right? It may be hard, but it should be doable. It should not be insurmountable to ask a senior person to spend some time with you, but do the work so that you can have a productive conversation on both sides. And to the extent that you have something to bring to them, even better, right? To the extent that you have a perspective because you see something that they can't see, even better. So we have about 3 minutes left. And so I'm gonna wrap by kind of asking the two of you. I'm trying to think of an easy question that doesn't stump you, but asking the two of you for words of advice. I'll just say, so you're listening to they have the organization listening to you. When they walk away, what do you want them to be thinking about as it relates to Women's History Month? It could be around mentorship or sponsorship or just kind of your perspective as a woman, or what are the things that you want someone to walk away with if they have this one opportunity to hear from you guys? Haley.
Okay, I'll go first. I would say be confident. I think that's really the biggest thing, especially as a woman. As you said in the statistics, we're just not as confident. We kind of say our work's not as good as it is, and I don't think that's true. Be proud in what you do. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but be confident that what you're putting together is the best it is, and just be yourself.
Yes. Oh, I love these I see the little emoji going. I see, yes, thank you. I love these. Aphrodita?
That's excellent advice, Haley. One thing that my dad always taught me growing up was just stay true to who you are. Sometimes you run into difficult situations at work in the professional environment. And one promise I always made to myself was I was not going to change who I am in response to something that was taking place. I'm a huge, advocate for that. What you get with me is this is who I am. And, be confident. I think women are really a special breed. We, I think, really can achieve anything that we set out to achieve. I just, as a working mom, what we need to juggle in any given day. I mean, the same goes for a female leader when you're managing a group of individuals and, a high priority, either deadlines or timeframes. I think that continued confidence, poise, staying authentic to who you are, and just being honest through it all really goes a long way.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with both of you, and I thank you both. I Authenticity is huge for me. But in order to be authentic, I'll just say you have to know yourself, right? So you can't be authentic unless you take the time to do the work on who you are and who you want to be. So Haley, your idea around role models are really important. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm not a big proponent of a full-time work from home arrangement, because I do think in order to find a role model, you actually have to kind of see them and see how they operate, and that's harder to do when you're home. So I love that we have this hybrid model. You have to think about who you want to be, put some work into who you want to be when you grow up. And once you kind of have that, then you can start to think about, well, who can I emulate? And to thine own self be true, right? So when something isn't working for you, then you can own it and say it. You have the voice to be able to think about the right kinds of environments, the right kind of way that you want to be role modeled. You have also have, but also be open to advice and feedback, because I think all of us grow and learn, so we don't all know everything, no matter how senior you are, right? So taking the honest feedback, digging, kind of digging into the feedback that you're getting, and all that is, your career is a culmination of all those experiences and all that advice that forms a career, and that's what we want to be able to give our people here. So, ladies, thank you so much for spending the time with me. You both did an amazing job. So even though you were voluntold, as I knew, you would both walk into this gracefully, and leave lots of pearls of wisdom. So I thank you both. As always, I thank the team that worked on this. I'm not going to list them all because I know we're a little bit over, but I thank everyone that worked on this. And I hope as an organization, you continue to enjoy and participate in these. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have a survey that's right afterwards. We take your feedback. We do these for you. So if there's feedback that you want to share, please share it. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Yeah.